One, two, three, four. One, two, three, four. One, two, three.
Hello, we are live. Hey everyone, it's me, John. Thank you so much for joining me. Looks like we got a bunch of people already kicking around in the chat. Just want to say hi to a couple of people. John B, Redwood, Alien Society, who wants to say hello to all. Emma Forbes, Coco Johnson, Connor Leeson. Hey everyone, welcome to a live edition of JohnnyVlogs. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I know I usually would go and do Patreon supporters, but we've got some guests. They're on a bit of a tight time schedule. So anyone that joined the Patreon bandwagon, we're going to talk about you next week. For today, we have very special guests I want to get to. They are the filmmakers for Breaking the Cycle. This film is really special for me. It hit my top 10 list at the end of the year. And it started a lot of conversation on the channel that I thought was really important. And it was very cool that we had the two filmmakers reach out. The names are Tomas Lindh and John Stark, and they are with me now. Let's go ahead and bring them into the conversation. If I bring up the right window, there we go, and turn their mics on. Hey guys.
Hello, John.
Thank you
Thanks
so much.
so much for having us, and hello to you all following this.
Thank you guys for joining. I really appreciate it. So I just wanted to start by talking a little bit about this film and kind of congratulating you guys on not just making a compelling film that is creating some very important dialogue, but it's also clear to me how committed you guys are to continuing that dialogue, even though the film is already, in the can and being watched by people. And that's something that is kind of special about my audience in particular, is I feel like we really care about others, and to see people like us doing that kind of work really moves me. So thank you guys so much for being a part of that type of movement and doing that. The other thing I wanted to point out is this conversation. I think you guys know how tough this conversation is in the US. And I think that making this film is striking a very good chord, a very important step in changing the public's perception about these problems, or at least raising the questions for the public as well. So also, let me just mention to everyone, John is in an airport, so you might be hearing some of the airport noise in the background. I'm going to try to control the audio there a little bit as we're going. And John, if there's something you can do, if you feel like you've got a quick little mute button or something on that and you want to hop in and out, just please do.
That's good. Yeah.
Okay. So it's an important film. I know many of you have already watched it. We've talked about it on the channel on 3 separate shows already. A lot of great dialogue has happened around that, but I want to give Thomas and John a quick chance to just kind of tell us what the film is about from your perspective. What is this film about?
The film is really about the perception of prison and the purpose of incarceration, I think. A few years back, I think it's 6 or 7 years ago, we sort of saw Halden, the world's most humane prison in Norway, was just being built at the time. It was finished in 2010. When it opened its doors, there was a lot of media from all around the world visiting Halden, and a majority, I'd say 95% of the reporting that came out of those stories in newspapers and TV were about, the music studio, how, luxurious the environment is, how this is like a summer camp really. And it was very hard for, I'd say, the rest of the world to really recognize that, the purpose of this facility was something else than we are used to. And we sort of, me and John, we were sitting and having a coffee, I think, and we started to think about how could we bring some added value, a new perspective, a new understanding into what a prison and the purpose of incarceration really is. And the first story we did was we invited a retired deputy warden the warden from Attica State Prison over to Halden and followed his trip around the facilities. And he was shocked, and he said he never thought this would work, that they would have to close in 5 or 6 years due to violence and assaults. And, he didn't give it any chance at all. And as a backstory, he invited us over to Attica, and the management at Attica, he was retired. They didn't like the idea at all. But a few years later, the management was changed, and the new guys in charge said that, sure, come over and let us show you what a U.S. prison is like through the eyes of a deputy warden who works at this humane facility. And I'd say the end result was very powerful in a way that I think me and John, we made a few correct decisions early on.
Yeah.
We didn't want to focus on the violence. We didn't want to focus on the drugs or the gangs and do this, there's hundreds or thousands of prison documentaries that, ride on this popular culture theme that prison is a violent place and there's drugs and, it's a jungle and you need to survive. And we tried to do the opposite. We gave the people we interviewed plenty of time in order for you as a viewer to recognize them as, people.
Yes.
People who have done something wrong and people who still believe in something and have dreams and hopes. And also a very slow tempo in the documentary in itself, in order for you to really get to look at the environment. What phones are they using? What kind of posters are hanging on the wall? And I think a unique storyline and unique access to Attica and the decisions in tempo and what we should focus on is what makes this, in my opinion, a really good documentary that drives humanity and not, violence. And
You touched on a really important point, but before I go to that, I want to give John a chance. John, what does this film mean to you? I'm sure you support a lot of what Tomas said, but is there anything else in particular?
Well, Tomas said the main things. I think definitely what I'd also like perhaps to put in focus here is also the aspect that we do not claim to know the answer or any objective truth, and we do not either try to say that this method and this way of dealing with things is better than any other, but we merely try to present the facts. Really, this is how we do it here, and that's how they do it there. It's up for to you as a viewer to decide what you think of each thing, and make up your own mind.
I think that's really fair to point out, and I think that's why you're getting some of the reactions that you are. And I have to say, I was shocked by the music studio thing too. But that just goes to prove that you guys are giving a very unbiased perspective. You're really showing, hey, this is what's going on there. And as viewers, we didn't have the opportunity to learn much about how Halden developed. Did it start like that? Was it a course of years and many lessons that eventually came to that? And I think that's part of the beauty of this movie, is that it shows a comparison between something that was highly developed and thought of and engineered to be substantially different from what the norm is, compared to what we see as pretty much the norm here in the U.S. Also, back to Thomas's comment about trying to show the inmates as people. I just watched it again this morning, and I noticed that, you really don't talk too much about the crimes that the people actually did. And I think that was a really good choice. There's only one segment in particular when you get the think tank together and you kind of talk about what they had done to get them in there. But everyone else is pretty much absolved of that. And it's a nice, gentle reminder that I don't think any of us are made from one thing that we did in our lives. You know, if all of us were going to be held to one thing that we did at one time in our lives, it probably wouldn't be good for a lot of us. So I really appreciated that you guys took that approach. Was that a conscious decision that you would not go into the crimes?
Yeah, it was. We debated it because in a way, I remember when I think this was during the script where we tried to, roughly decide what sort of scenes and would be most powerful. And we discussed this, that in order to be transparent and give the viewer all of the background, in order to judge these people, you really should have known, the crime. Is this what has this person done in order to be here? Because but we decided to include it in the workshop, because in the workshop you've already got to know them, and they are very articulate, and they are very clear-minded, and they are very intelligent in the workshop, and they really try to think about this. And it was a nice contrast to have the facts about what they've done just before they are really shining the most. They were shining, in my opinion, in the interviews as well, but
Yeah.
it was very effectful to present a very brutal fact about some of the guys that have done horrible things, and then see them actually function as normal people in this workshop and coming up with creative, intelligent ideas.
The workshop piece is definitely like a crescendo to the whole story for me. I mean, to have them using their own thoughts and essentially putting together the same structure that we're talking about in Halden is an amazing testimony to what they're looking for. And there's one shot in particular where the gentleman is presenting to the audience what this jail looks like, and he draws different boxes for each of the different corners. And what really struck me about those boxes were they were kind of based on humanity. Like, he had a place for a church, like they wanted to work on their spirit. He had a place for health. He had the gym, of course, was built in there. Education, the vocational school. And if you boil down what those buildings were to what these inmates were really asking for, it was pretty much an opportunity for them to correct those parts of themselves that probably led them to this place in the first case.
Yeah, John. Well, you're touching upon one of the most central points in the documentary, and also within the Norwegian method of dealing with incarceration, and that is one of the most central points is the so-called principle of normality, which means that.
Oh,
I think John dropped off for a second.
But I think you know where he was going. Oh,
I know where he was going. Yeah.
John, you broke up a little bit, but you're back. If you want to go ahead and give it to us again, go for it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, just briefly, the one of the main principles within the Norwegian incarceration system is the principle of normality, which means that they try to recreate normal life, inside the walls as well as possible, and that includes basic stuff like education and the right to vote in elections, going to school and church and so on, and that says a whole lot. Their freedom is taken away, and that's their punishment, but that's all there is. In other words, you can do, you can live as normal life as possible, with those restraints, of course.
Right.
It really, in its simplest form, and that is really why Halden is designed the way it is. The architecture of it is that you wake up at one place in the morning and you go physically to another place in order to work. You go away and eat lunch, and you go back to work, and then you go back to your house, just as you do, in normal life. And that doesn't really, break the rhythm if you are stuck in a system without the same chain of events as in normal life in society, it's very hard for you to come back and adapt that chain and start to think, all right, I need to leave to go to work, and you know.
That reminds me of the scene in the film when they're talking about basketball, and Jan Stromness is the warden that has come over to view Attica, and he's talking to the officials about, well, do the correctional officers basically play with the inmates when they're playing basketball? And they go into this whole thing about no, we can't have a conflict. You know, someone jumps up, they bump the other guy. But if we're talking about putting these people back into society, those are exactly the learning opportunities that those guys might need. Like, conflict resolution is a very necessary skill to live in society. And
I'd say, yeah.
you know, for them to not be able to learn that in a very simple way, a schoolyard way. This is a type of thing that a lot of us learned when we were coming up in school. We would have those situations and get angry at someone for bumping you too hard when you're playing a game. But you learned how to deal with that through those experiences. And now we have people that I think a lot of us would agree they're not developed fully in some way, either socially. There might be other factors going on here. Maybe they didn't have family around. But now is a chance to maybe address some of those things so that we let them out kind of better people than when we brought them in.
Yeah, and that is, you know, the main purpose, and that is surely what you know, the correctional officers and the wardens in the US hope as well, that you come here and you learn something and you are prepared. But the main question is really what system is working better, and you know, to construct a wall between the correctional officers and the inmates inside the prison by simple rules, as saying you cannot participate in the game, I can't because I'm something else than you.
Right.
Every such barrier is really, really hard to break down the sense of authority. A lot of the
Hold on a second. I think John's baby is having a coughing fit right now.
someone else's baby. Well, he muted it. Yeah. So in Norway and in Nordic countries, there's interactivity is very promoted, that you engage with each other and you sort of build trust between the correctional officer and inmates, and to prohibit participating in a game of football, for example, would be a negative thing, because that builds that wall that sort of can lead to conflict and leads to a separation. Right. And the inmates sort of take comfort within themselves, and you know, potentially start something that is not good for the system as a whole. So one of the main differences was how interactive the staff and the inmates are with each other.
Right. Now, I know one of the big differences the film highlights, and I know you guys have a bunch of questions. We're going to get to them just as soon as I can. One of the big differences, it's actually pretty much stated in the film by an inmate, is that the U.S. system seems to be revenge-based. That it seems like we want to put people in there, but it's not enough to have them locked up. We want to know that they are paying on a minute-to-minute, day-by-day basis the whole time that they're in there. Do you guys have personal feelings about that revenge-based system?
Well, really, I think it all boils down to one simple fact. I think at least that I'm a pragmatic person, and the fact is that punishment doesn't work. You know, the statistics say so, and hate does not create positive things in the end. Hate creates more hate. Right. So that's undisputable, I think. So that's my statement.
But basically. there is the question which you guys did raise in the film of John, your wife was murdered by this man. Do you want him to go to Halden, or do you want him to go to Attica?
Yeah. Well. I think one of our main characters, Mrs. Carrion Wolfer, says it, 10,000 times, better than I ever could in the film. So I'll leave the words to her. But yeah, it's on a personal level, it's an extremely difficult and challenging question. but you need to raise it to a higher level, since you cannot judge these things on a personal emotional level, but you need to have a system that thinks about the whole issue.
Yeah, and I think there is also a very big difference between people that have actually personally experienced that type of loss and us trying to imagine ourselves in those situations. Because I have heard comments from people, I look into a lot of cases where families have been wronged in some way. And I do hear comments quite often from those families that they have a more humanitarian approach to that person. They don't want that person given the death penalty, for example, because they say, well, what are 2 deaths going to do? That's not solving the problem of bringing my daughter back. Any other comments on that, Thomas, before I cut to some
No,
questions?
it's a very tough question, because I mean, on a personal level, if something like that would happen to me, I mean, of course, I think a very natural reaction would be to be tremendously pissed off.
Yeah.
I mean, really, and wishing the worst possible, circumstances for the person who did it. I think that, and I hope that you can still recognize the fact that they are 2 separate things. One is what is in the long run better for society. Is it that guys is coming out in the Nordic countries 10, 15 years and actually functioning, not hurting someone else?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it more beneficial to just satisfy my primal instincts that this guy should really be put to the sword? And if you can separate those things, you can see that perhaps the rehabilitation is something that is more beneficial in the long run, and that is why we should strive for that. But of course, I would be pissed off every day for those 15 years and for the rest of my life if it happened. But they are 2 separate things.
Yeah.
So, but it's a very central question. But Carrie-Anne Wolf said it in the end of the movie that one is about rehabilitation, the other one is about emotions, and you cannot, you have to have separate systems to deal with those. I most certainly would need therapy and a lot of assistance to get over the murder of my wife or my kids.
Right.
But that emotion shouldn't be satisfied through the correctional services.
Yep. Okay. Well, we are going to go to some questions here, and let's see if I can catch up on some. There's a lot of conversation going on here, of course. And let's see. Sorry, guys. I don't have a real great way to scroll back up in the live chat. So go ahead and hit me with the new questions that you have here. Yeah, there's some very interesting conversation going on. And really, it's echoing the same thing that we're all struggling with in this is the revenge aspect. And outside of that, how that's implemented. Something that struck me when I was watching it today, actually, here's an interesting comment from Sharon Keeley. My nephew was killed. They got his killer's trial collapsed. Been 10 years and no justice. At first, I wish them dead. Now, I just want some justice. Definitely interesting point of view from someone that has gone through that. The thing I was concerned about when I was rewatching it was, again, the correctional officers that were dealing with the inmates and how affected they seem to be. By far, if you group these people in this film, they seem to be the most depressed, the most, they're happy just to get home safely at the end of the day. Obviously, they feel like they're working in extremely dangerous situations. And even according to the information that the film puts out, they're having attacks at Attica, it seems, kind of regularly, where there's something happening there. But when you consider that whole revenge aspect that we're talking about, it occurred to me that they are part of the mechanism that is exacting that revenge on these people from a day-to-day basis, and just the mindset that they would have to be in to think that that's part of their role is a really dark place to go to and live in. And I think that's why it seemed to me, just as a viewer, that so many of them seemed unhappy and unhealthy, quite frankly, especially in comparison to what we were seeing over in Norway, where Go ahead.
John, do you remember the rates of suicides among correctional officers in the U.S.? It was
I can't remember that particular statistics, but what we do know, based on what Mr. Jan Strömnes has researched, CEOs in the US have significantly higher PTSD than even war veterans, and that's really serious if you think about it.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
yeah. So there's, as a work culture, it's something that is very unhealthy for the people who are working there. Absolutely.
Now, when we were talking before we started this live stream, you mentioned a previous series, and I didn't know about this. Was there some work you had done before this film?
We made a 6-part series it was broadcasted in Norway, Denmark, Finland, Sweden, and
Hong Kong, I believe, as well. Yeah.
it was sold to a few countries as well.
Okay.
It was about really a lot of differences between the Nordic welfare states and how stuff are being done all around the world. One of the episodes, it's called The Norden. It's available, some of the episodes on YouTube, I think, and there's shorter versions as well. One of the first episode was about prison. Then we had one about religion, where we invited a priest or a
Baptist priest from
Baptist priest from the southern parts of US, and he had some very interesting discussions with priests in Copenhagen that are marrying gay people, for example, and the whole concept of God and God and state. So the first episode was about prisons, and it was really that episode that led to the invitation to come to Attica, because it's very hard to get the cameras into Attica, and we managed to be there for 4.5 days, which is the longest period ever allowed to a TV crew.
Wow. And there's obviously a truth that we should consider in that. I'm sure what you saw was the absolute best of what Attica has to offer, because they knew that they were being filmed at that time, obviously.
Yeah, and to be completely honest, and it's no secret, I think. Of course, the management and staff, they handpicked these inmates for us and for our needs, and still they're very well handpicked, if I may say, since they're very outspoken and they have great rhetoric. They know what they want to say and so on. So it's still great content.
Yeah.
And we got a glimpse of the real Attica as well. I mean, we stayed several afternoons and nights, overlooking the yard, hearing the people talk, hearing the tension, while they were eating and walking in, from place A to B inside Attica. You passed these long rows of cells, and you could hear the atmosphere, and you could really feel that there's a lot of
sense the true tension in there, which is real. So
right. There's also just a little glimpse of it that kind of comes through in the film when you're shooting the cell block and someone pokes their hand out and flips off the camera. You can kind of get a sense that maybe not everyone was happy, or maybe they were taking advantage of you guys being there to try to get a message out that
and I mean, in Halden as well, most of the blocks look exactly like the ones we filmed in. We have visited several of the blocks, and they are constructed in the same ways, but of course there are inmates arriving at Halden that have absolutely no interest whatsoever into being there or being rehabilitated.
Right.
To their credit, most of these people are still able to function with other people, sharing a kitchen, sharing a living room at some point. So, I mean, that speaks to the progress that is being made. I would be interested to see how many people transform in the same way inside Attica.
And still, just as a fact, it's very, I think, vital to remember that both Attica and Halden are still, in fact, maximum security prisons, and the guys who are in there have committed serious violent crimes. So you can't put them on the same,
their criminal record. So.
Yeah, I guess that's one downside of us not knowing the crimes, was we didn't have a good comparison of if they were the same types of inmates. But you're saying they're both maximum security, so we're talking,
serious offenses.
Serious,
very
serious.
serious.
Okay. I know that a common perception issue around this film is that it seems like the inmates at Halden might be on vacation. You know, it seems like a place where some people are saying they wouldn't mind being if that's really what it's like. But even in this conversation here, you mentioned them going to work. Can you tell us about their typical day at Halden?
Yeah, they get up in the morning, not too early, but not too late either, and then they make their own breakfast and they chit chat for a while, and then most of them go to work or to school within the premises of the facility, of course, and then they have lunch, just like Thomas mentioned, and then they return to work or school, and then in the evenings, not every evening, but most of the evenings, they have some form of activity, and then at I think 7:30 or 6:30 or something, they're locked up in their cell and remain there until the morning. And I think this is it's very important to keep in mind that it okay for some people this may look like a vacation, but we need to put Holden, you know, in a Norwegian living standard context. This is not luxurious in Norway, you know, living like this. It's not bad, but it's not good either. So it's completely okay, and that needs to be remembered all the time.
Yeah, and when we interviewed people in the Norwegian prisons, some of them didn't make the cut into the documentary. But I mean, grown men crying alone in their bed at 9 o'clock when it's, you know, lights out and the doors locked, and perhaps we sort of underestimate how powerful and how brutal it is to have someone take away your freedom and just, you know, lock you up. That in itself is very painful and very hard to deal with, and it's a punishment in itself, because you are locked up and you cannot decide what to do.
Yeah,
So,
that's kind of a point I made when I did the first video on this, was by giving them more of a normalized life within those walls, it really highlights the walls. Because even the gentlemen in Attica, you heard them talking about, you know, they're in fear that they're going to get beat up, or that they're going to be seen as the sap and someone's going to take their candy bar and their shoes and do all that. They have so many other fears that are compounded with them being in there that maybe they would lose focus a little bit of the fact that they are indeed there to serve a sentence specifically for what they have done.
yeah, and there was one prisoner that we spoke to in North Dakota, I think, who hadn't left his cell for a month because he was assaulted in the mess hall. So he more or less stayed inside his cell just in order to be locked up and be safe. And I mean, of course, the perspectives, if you compare that to what's going on inside the head of the Norwegian prisoner and him, it's, you know, the difference is enormous.
Is there a mechanism in Halden, like if someone did want to lock themselves up in their room and didn't want to participate, would that be allowed, or are they forced to go to work and to school? How's that handled?
We're not, you know, complete experts on this, but from what I remember and from what we've learned, they do at certain times have the possibility to lock themselves in their cells, you know, to you know, if they want to be alone, for example, or if there for some reason would be some sort of not fights. Fights are extremely rare in Halden, but if there's some, you know, argument or something,
Okay.
and you just want to leave it, then it's completely okay to lock your door. But I'm not sure how you know they deal with, you know, someone not wanting to do this or that, but the answer is always communication. They talk a whole lot, and the role of the correction officer at Halden is more of a, you know, contact officer. You know, you have your own personal CO which you know talk to, and you know they get to know you, and you talk about your future and so on. So it's, you know, they try to find a soft approach to everything. If you don't want to do that, then okay, well, why not? And what has led you to that conclusion? And should we think it over? And so on, so on. So they talk and talk and talk.
So almost like a guidance counselor.
Yeah,
in
very much
effect?
so.
Each correctional officer is being dealt, was it 2 or 3 inmates that he or she is personally responsible for. And one of the interesting aspects is they do this plan for the future. Okay, you are getting out in 11 years. What would you like to achieve, or what would you like to be able to do when you get out? And how can we gradually get you to the point that when you get out of here, you can start the life that we planned together? And in the dialogue, in the communication, there's a lot of trust being built. And I think that trust is really the most valuable currency and commodity inside Halden.
When you looked into Attica, did you see anyone that was playing that type of role of being almost like a guidance counselor or a counselor of any kind?
I can honestly say, hand on my heart, that no one. I didn't see a single one. And it really shows in the workshop as well that the need of the inmate was never taken into consideration.
Right.
It was also always the need of the CEO, the facility, the system, whether or not we should make a change or if we could develop something. It was never, what do these people need who are spending, the rest of their lives here, or 20, 25 years? It was the driving motive was always what could be done in order to raise security, to protect us, or. And in the workshop, I mean, a lot of the solutions that they were mentioning that would be very easy to implement was never even taken into consideration, because there has never been such a workshop where they are thinking about the inmates and what could we do for them.
Yeah, you could tell that the administration looked almost shocked at the information that was being presented to them. And it's strange because it was such a common sense type of presentation. You sit there and you're watching him talk about it and you're going, yeah, oh, of course. They should have that. I imagine that was a very interesting meeting to actually be in the room on and to capture those reactions.
And for those of you who have seen the first episode of the Norden, where James Conway visited Halden, he said in the end that he would love to come back in 5 years to see if this works. Mm-hmm. And from the day that he said it in Oslo or in Halden to where we were filming in the workshop, it was roughly 5 years. And I remember that he really asked us for permission to say something in the workshop, and he waited in order for all the cameras to get ready, mm-hmm. because he really wanted to get it on tape that I was wrong. I was in Halden. I thought this was going to go tits up. This is never going to work. And when he realized that there has been no assault, there are still people getting assaulted almost daily in Attica. Right. He really wanted to say that there's something in that system that works. I was wrong, and we should learn from this. And it was nice that he really went through an effort to get it on tape.
It's more than nice. It's brave. I think it's another one of the highlights of the film.
He worked at the prison for 30 years. So.
Yeah, and that's the type of change that we're hoping to see from this type of conversation. Someone that has firsthand knowledge, has tons of years of experience, did it that way for all that time, and admitting to the possibility that there is a different way to do it. Yeah. In the film, it touched on a concept called dynamic safety. Can you tell us a little more about that? I wasn't quite positive about. Hold on, we have to hear what flight John's catching first. Thomas, can you tell us a little about dynamic safety?
Yeah, and I want to point out that I'm not an expert on the correctional services, but I have a lot of information, and I read a lot, and I've seen a lot. Dynamic safety is really about, what we were talking about earlier with the correctional officers that is working very closely with 2 or 3 people, inmates. And when one of the correctional officers is working almost daily with the same type of person, he or she can very easily recognize that you are acting differently today. or you seem very upset, or you're very frustrated, you usually do not, behave like this. There's
Right.
something going on here, and that gives, them days of a head start to recognize a problem that could escalate into something much, much worse. Because that tight connection between the correctional officer and the inmate gives a very early sign. And, in its simplest form, it's really about that
Okay.
you really get to know the people that well that you can recognize if something is needed, if something is lacking, or if there's a fight brewing, between two guys living next to each other, then you can move one of the guys out before something happens.
So once again, it's more of a campus mentality,
It's
almost like
proactive.
having a room
proactive.
advisor of some kind or someone that is kind of keeping their ear out for looking for potential signs there. John, did you
Yeah.
have something to add to that?
Yeah, well, just compared to most U.S. prisons, which have their focus on so-called static security, which means walls, cameras, surveillance, and so on. And
Right.
so that's static, but the the word dynamic does imply the most important elements here. So it's just like Thomas said.
Absolutely. Okay, so I want to bring this up because I still struggled with it when I watched the film again today. That scene where criminal records pops up just gives me the strangest twinge. And I know John and I talked a little bit on Twitter about that, but I wanted to give you guys a chance to talk about what you thought about the criminal records music studio, any potential benefits, ups or downs of having that kind of thing within a prison like this.
Well, it's like Thomas mentioned earlier. It's if you see it the first time, it's easy to taunt it and think that what the hell is that? And of course, I think hand on heart, we thought that as well. But when you understand what they do there, they do have some musical education and so on, and they have stuff like choirs and or bands and so on within the prison, for cultural reasons and so on, and spare time stuff. But they also do stuff like record themselves reading stories for their kids outside the walls and so on. So it's basic stuff that actually adds value to the whole system. So yeah.
And you mentioned that they only get a certain amount of time in there. It's not like they can go just spend the whole day in the studio.
It's part of the programs, yeah. So I mean, when it's dedicated that 2 days a week, or you are in the music class, for example, then you get access to the studio and you can work on a project or do music together with other inmates. So I mean, the schedule is there. You wake up in the morning, you go to workshops, you go to programs. The music is one of the programs they have.
Okay. Now, I just want to touch on Dale Artis, he's the superintendent at Attica, right? Oh, we just lost John. Give me a second here. I just need to move a window around. All right. If he pops back in, we'll let him back in. Just you and me, Thomas. So, I lost my question.
Dale Artis.
Yes. He almost comes off a little bit like if there was going to be a villain in this piece. I think Dale kind of hits that note. And it's interesting because ultimately something that he says becomes the title of the film. And almost in the same way as the other supervisor there, where we see maybe you're making some headway into giving or getting some different thoughts from them in terms of what a good prison should be. Dale really seems like, I don't know if he just wasn't getting it. What was your perspective on what Dale was going throughout this project?
I think for me, Dale, I mean, when we were staying at Attica, he was absolutely perfect. He's a brilliant guy. He gets a lot. I think Jan Strömnes says it in the documentary as well, that everyone that we met was very progressive, very intelligent, very clear-minded, but they were sort of caught up in a system that is not working very well, and they have no tools themselves to change it really. And that is sort of an underlining frustration I feel with Dale, because I mean, he told me when we were walking to the workshop that if he would be able to give out, get out of jail cards,
Yeah.
he would most probably give those cards to the people participating, because they were at a point that they were actually, perfectly okay to not spend the rest of their lives inside Attica. And in a way, he I think realizes the same thing that James Conway sees, that this endless circle and this cycle of letting people out unprepared, without jobs, with a stigma of being a former ex-inmate, it's so counterproductive, and it will lead to more suffering, more people getting hurt, or people being left alone and just a burden on society. So I think they all realize that, but it's coming back to the polarization of the US in many questions, where it's either 100% one way or 100% the other way. And that makes the political debate very, very hard, because either you are for, punishment, or you are for rehabilitation, but there's no middle ground. There's, if you are not tough on crimes, you lose votes. So people are tough on crimes. And, that is
Uh,
a very difficult question, how to solve that.
and one thing to point out, I'm not sure if you talked about it briefly, but uh, if you need to make a change at some point, it has to begin from educating and giving the staff, the COs, more training, more education. That's the only way really to begin implementing the changes, by giving them the possibility to do more stuff.
Kind of like we saw in the example in North Dakota that you showed, right? I mean, just small changes, kind of taking some of these ideas and just trying them out.
Yeah, and the we versus them atmosphere needs to boil down to something else, where you are here because you made a mistake, and we are going to work together in order to prepare you for a time when you can walk freely again. And how should we do that? And I don't think, there's a lot of talk about costs, and how much Halden cost when they built it, and the annual cost of running the facilities. But there's a lot of elements in the more humane uh, correctional system that is absolutely free, to just have another approach to what is my purpose here, and what should we achieve together. And I think the thing that's going to cost is that you cannot have prisons with a population of 2,500 people, and 30 prisoners per correctional officer, because you are never going to build the trust and the sense that this person, and that you are trying to achieve something together.
That's something I
So
wanted to ask you guys about. Did you detect a difference in the sizes of the administrations from one prison to the other? Was anyone particularly bigger or smaller?
Difficult to say. I think we didn't actually deal a whole lot with that, but still, the sheer size and difference in size is humongous. It can't be stressed enough. But like, many viewers on YouTube have noticed that, that how the hell is it possible that Halden is something like 1/10 of the size of Attica, and still the amount of staff is, and the inmate staff ratio is completely different. So
Yeah.
yeah, but in the long term, you are saving a lot of money, because these people a lot of them are not coming back. A lot of them get productive in their work, start to pay taxes, and you really need to look ahead to what are the calculation in 30 years or 40 years, and then you come out on top.
Right. Right. We're getting close to the end, but I did want to touch on another subject with you guys. Have you been following the kind of news about Rikers Island that's been kicking around out here lately?
not really, to be honest. No.
I missed that.
Okay.
I missed that.
Just over the past couple of days, I've been seeing some information that they're talking about closing Rikers Island because of all the corruption that has been going on for so long, and they're going to try to decentralize it. So they're going to rebuild new prisons that are in the boroughs instead of all off on this one island. the thing that troubles me with that is I don't know how that addresses the problem of the corruption. Typically, when you're working in business, you're trying to consolidate things so that you can get a better handle on them. And Rikers Island is essentially a big consolidation. I mean, enormous prison. It processes, I think, I just read some Wikipedia stuff on it, but it processes up to 100,000 prisoners per year. But more than 80% of them get released because their charges eventually fall off. Some very strange things that go on there. But I don't know how moving to several smaller prisons in the boroughs is necessarily going to address that. Did you guys have any thoughts?
My own spontaneous thought, without knowing much details and without being an expert in within the field of criminology, but rather a TV content maker, but still, I would always argue for the potential of small units where people know each other better and so on, and the potential to implement, perhaps try new methods, try out new theories and so on. It's much easier in small units, and then you'd really need to hire someone like Miss Karen Wolfer, doing stuff there, since she can she can break iron with her left pinky or something like that. She has really enormous power and willpower. So I think it would be a great potential to try and doing something different with having the possibility of small units.
Yeah, I agree with John. I mean, Attica was built with the same principle, that as far away from the New York City as possible, in order to make it as difficult as possible for the gangsters to get back in contact with people in New York City. In Halden, they use local schools and they use local libraries and local high schools and prisons, not prisons, but hospitals, in order to provide the services to the prison. And that is really that the people that you are meeting that are providing these services for you, like healthcare and education and so forth, they come from society. They are not, hired by the prison. And that gives, a sense of normality as well, that you have a perfect, normal high school teacher teaching you, or a pretty standard nurse that takes care of you. Right. And that is very interesting. And that is only possible with smaller facilities located, close to people.
Very interesting point. I've got one more topic I want to touch before we let you guys go, and I know it sounds like John needs to pay attention to his crying baby. But is there any talk of a follow-up to this film, or any projects that are related to it that are going to be coming out in the future?
We are in the process of early planning. We are starting to find locations and main characters, and we are definitely working on a follow-up.
Hold on a second, Thomas. Hey, John, can you pull the plug on it real quick? I just want to make sure to get this. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Thomas.
There's a baby who doesn't love to fly there, I think. Yeah. I was just saying that we are working with early concepts of a script. What locations we should be filming on, what main characters, and the overall story. How can we build upon the story in a constructive way, so we are not repeating ourselves, but taking the story and the problems and the potential solutions even further. So it's very early, but we think it's gonna be good, and it's gonna be made. And early timetable or something like early deadline is something like 2020, I think, or 2019 perhaps.
Yeah. So financing takes a long time.
Oh, looks like his coin ran out.
Is one part of it. I mean, we had the Finnish broadcasting company and the Norwegian broadcasting company along with us on this documentary, and perhaps that is something that could work for a follow-up as well. But these projects take time. But we have I think there's a lot of people who are seeing that Breaking the Cycle added some true value to the important discussions, and there are a lot of people who want to have these stories to start debate with, and to we've a lot of universities have acquired the film as well, to including criminology and sociology classes,
Excellent.
yes, and that is good because that means the story is going to live on. I mean, people have been talking about it now for a while, and at some point they are going to stop talking about it, but it's still going to be used, constructively within universities, and for people to watch and think about.
Is it
And
available? Do you know, is it on Netflix worldwide or is it just in the US?
it's Netflix worldwide, yeah.
Okay, excellent.
So,
So,
so it's available for everyone who's watching this.
okay. It looks like John's going to try to get back in the room, but I think we're at a good spot to call it. So, thank you guys so much. Just know that I really appreciate all the work and effort that you're putting, not just into the film and putting out an amazing piece like that, a piece that got so many people motivated to talk about this, but obviously all the work that you're doing after the fact to keep that conversation going. I'm really excited to see what you guys do with it next. I do think that there is a very easy and natural progression to go down, and that is to find more prisons that are willing to try little pieces of what come from that first movie and then try to document that and keep raising those questions, keep getting people talking about it, and working on this overall big perception issue, because we've got a bit of a perception problem here in the US. There's a good chunk of us that want to put people in a box and let them rot, and we're not thinking far ahead enough about, well, what happens when they're let out of that box, because it's not everyone that gets life in prison. It's the majority of them don't. They come out. So
Yeah, absolutely, and that is, in my opinion, very important to get people to realize, because, and we've been in contact with many prisons, not only in North Dakota and Attica, but in Pennsylvania and in Virginia, and there are a lot of progressive people who are working at these places that want change. For some reason, it's very hard, because it has to be almost a political decision that let's change the course and let's do it another way, and that is going to take some time. But on the ground level, the people working within the prison community and within the prisons themselves are very progressive, also in the US, and that is, for me, that is very. I'm very glad to hear from them and hear them say it, because I didn't think that there were so many of them.
Yeah. Well, hopefully there'll be a lot more of them with you guys doing the hard work you are. So thank you so much for doing all that. Thomas, I know I was telling you to hang on, but I think I'm going to go ahead and have you drop off, because I'm going to jump over and just hang out with the crowd a little bit. They're talking. I just want to answer some of their stuff. I'll be sure to contact you guys in email. And just once again, thank you from the bottom of my heart for being part of this.
Thank you so much for having us. It's wonderful. Thank you, John. And we'll keep you posted if we.
Absolutely. Please do. Anytime you get movement on that project, or especially, I'd love to review it. I can't wait to see it. So
yeah. Have a good evening and stay warm.
Yeah, definitely. Get back to your vacation. Enjoy yourself.
Yeah. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, Thomas. All right, everyone. That is the chat with the filmmakers of Breaking the Cycle. I just wanted to kind of hang out with you guys for a little bit. We've got it. It's live. It's going. We're all still talking here. Rihanna Lloyd, what's up? Memento Mori, Sharon Keeley. How's it going, everyone? Got anything you want to chat about? Hit it in the live chat. Got any questions for me or anything? Let's do it. I'll give it a couple minutes, see if you guys want to go that way. If not, we'll just call it the end of the show and move on from there. And thank you for sticking through. I know we had some audio issues going on, particularly with the feed from the airport. It's a good learning lesson for me. I'll make sure to schedule my next interview so it doesn't happen when someone's in the airport. But I do think it's great that John was willing to be a part of it. Rihanna says, thank you for the interview. Thank you for being a part of it. Thank you for being here. Filbification is in there. Hey, what's up? Is it Inga Smith? Hello. Rihanna wants to know, how are the cats? I was actually wondering, I don't know if you've noticed, but lately, every now and then you might see me kind of move an arm here or there. The new cat, Lila, loves to be either in my lap or on my desk. I was wondering if she was going to stop by. Lila? If she does, I'll pull her up and give you guys a quick view. She's awesome. Losing Gary was a real tough one. Gary and Molly were the cats that were with my then girlfriend, and I really wasn't a cat person before them. So they kind of taught me how to love cats. As a matter of fact, I have a mug here that's Gary and Molly right there. Is that focusing? No. There we go. Oh, and of course, right when it focuses, I pull it out. I think this thing has a detect your face feature or something, so it's focusing on me instead. No. Well, anyway. And, losing both of them, they died about within a year of each other, so pretty tough. But finding Lila was definitely an uplift. She was on YouTube, believe it or not. We found a local organization called Caring for Cats. They do some really great work. They are a no-kill shelter. When Gary passed away, we had a bunch of food that was specific for him that we took over there, and we saw how they were treating their animals, thought it was pretty amazing. They have a YouTube channel, and that is where I saw a video of Lila. Her name was actually Lilac at the time, which we tried to stick with, but there's something about that hard K sound at the end that just didn't roll off the tongue, so we shortened it up to Lila. But she's really a sweetheart. They found her, and she had a bunch of kittens, and the kittens all got adopted out, and of course she didn't, which is kind of a frequent thing. She's probably about a year and a half old. And the previous cat that we got to kind of fill in for when Molly passed away, Chloe, we got her as a kitten. So we pretty recently had that whole little kitten experience. And there was really something that my wife and I were reaching for in terms of wanting to help a cat that maybe didn't have the best odds or chances, especially coming off taking care of an elderly cat. There was a lot that we were doing for Gary. So it felt good to find Lila and to give her a chance. And she's the most social cat that I've ever seen. Like, people come over, she doesn't go hide or run away in a room. She wants to be with the party. She wants to hang out with people. She loves being picked up. She's really cute, and she's kind of small compared to the other cats that we have. So she's got this tiny little face that is just super, super cute. Gary and Molly. Yeah, I keep that mug right by here, and obviously I keep Gary and Molly very close in my heart. I miss them both on a daily basis. Let's see. Please, the topic I've asked about Inga. That's the problem with this chat thing, Inga, is they roll by so fast I don't get to see, and I wish that I could just click on your name and it would show, what you've been talking about, but it doesn't quite do that. I'm here for the prison to help to reform. I hate how USA kills more by money and hate revenge driven. I saw someone mention it before, but Kids for Cash, another really good documentary. I've reviewed it on the show before, and it does show that there can be a very strange relationship between finance, basically between people making money and this prison system. That film in particular really highlights a very gross example. And let's see, love the cats. My partner's allergic to them, says Ashley Faye. That's a problem. I've got a friend that's actually allergic to cats too, but he has 3. I don't know if he takes pills for it often or how he deals with it, but somehow he does. Nikki Mack says that I love your show. Keep up the good work. Thank you so much, Nikki. I love doing this type of work, mainly because of finding people like you guys that care about these issues, that want to talk about things a little bit differently, that aren't looking for, sensationalized or creepy music. There's just a good, fair way, I think, to talk about the issues, and it seems like you guys appreciate that, and I do too. Justicar11, you are amazing, John. Thank you for all your hard work. Thank you guys. And thank you for recognizing that, because occasionally, I'll see a comment that kind of hits me wrong. People will occasionally you kind of assume that because I'm a YouTuber that I literally, blow most of my day. I fire on the camera for 30 minutes and then I'm done and then it's uploaded and blah, blah, blah. There's a lot that goes into the back end of the work here. In particular, for me, it's the research piece. Each of these cases, there's like a comfort point where I have to get to where I know I'm ready to talk about that case, and that takes hours of diving into research on these cases. I've kind of learned how to streamline it a little bit, where it's not like it used to be. Like I used to need a couple days to really be able to soak into a case, and now I'm covering so many cases that I had to figure out kind of a different way to do that. And sometimes that's using the help from researchers, but mainly it's just my personal workload, how I get to work in the morning, how I consider cases and move forward with them. So thank you guys that do recognize that. There is a lot that goes into this channel before the camera ever gets started. And then there's a bit of work that goes into it after too. YouTube isn't the easiest thing to work with. I'm still at a point where I would say probably 75% of my videos are automatically demonetized right off the bat. The ridiculous thing is, as soon as I ask them to do a manual review on it, probably like 98% of the time they let it through. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen until a day or two after the video has been posted. So most of my views have been lost at that point. But worth mentioning, Patreon support is doing really well. Thank you so much to my Patreon supporters. It makes a huge difference, particularly when you're considering what I'm losing in terms of revenue with those views. Even this live stream, I can't imagine why, when it's called JohnnyVlogs and it's an interview about a film, but they wouldn't let it be monetized. I think they've got like a flag for JohnnyVlogs now, which is strange because I can't think of an episode of JohnnyVlogs that they've held up not monetizing. I'm pretty sure every episode, if I've asked them to review it, they've actually turned it over. Justice is an idea, a feeling. You can get a sentencing, but only you decide what justice is, says Memento Mori. There is truth in that statement for sure. What is justice for one person might not be justice for another. And I think that's part of why, when we were talking earlier about a kind of revenge-based prison system, that's kind of what's dangerous about it. The people that are actually working with those prisoners are not the same people that were actually hurt by that person's crime. So what exactly is the revenge or the justice that they're able to lay on that person? Where's that coming from? Is it from personal experiences of that correctional officer where they've been wronged by other people and they're associating those feelings to the prisoners? If it is that really justice? I personally don't think so. My brain got kind of in a knot when I watched that documentary again this morning on that particular topic. I'm really concerned about the correctional officers. And especially with what we learned through today's interview, to hear that they have such tough issues that they're dealing with, even comparable to people that are in the military is ridiculous. TR Taylor 29, please do more Q&A live stream chats in the future. It's something I love doing it once it's on and once it's going, but man, I drive myself crazy leading up to it. I am just so afraid that something's technically going to go wrong, which obviously today we did have. We had one of our participants drop out twice. I had to move windows around in the middle of the live stream, but this is YouTube. I get it. It's okay to let that stuff go on. It's not network television. Randy Magnum, Johnny, it's hard knowing the lack of justice in the world. Like, if there's any justice in the world, I would be your man. You would be my girl. Oh yeah. I think that went into a lyric. I think he started writing a song. Randy, you might want to get a notepad out and jot some of that stuff down. Love the Q&A. Please do more of them. I will, but there's something I need to figure out in it, because I was really hoping that today's Q&A could be more questions that were driven by you guys, but the chat, I don't know that it really works for that. I might talk to my associate producer, Christy, and see if potentially if she could help me out with that. Like, if she could watch the live chat while I'm talking, because that's another thing that's hard about this. Yes, I've got, the technical considerations that I'm dealing with. I've got a conversation I'm trying to keep going, and I want them to know I'm paying attention to them. But then I've got this other conversation stream going on over here. Maybe I could have Christy kind of watch the chat, and then maybe she could direct message me questions or something like that. I need some way to process what's going on with the chat while I'm having a conversation with someone else. So if I got any learning takeaway from today, that was definitely it. Anita Kunal, I believe. Hi, John. I'm a big fan of your work. You are amazing for doing what you do. By the way, I'm in Lisbon. Well, hello, everyone in Lisbon. And hi, Anita. And thank you so much for the kind words. Don't know how to contact you. Inga, I can be reached at john@lordanarts.com. JOHN@LORDANARTS.com. Or on Twitter. I'm very easy to get a hold of on Twitter. Rhiannon Lloyd wants to go into capital punishment. It is a difficult topic. Probably more than I can go into in one video. I struggle with it. There is certainly cases where I feel like it should happen. Todd Colehep, man, that is just such a tough situation for me emotionally. I mean, to know what Kayla Brown went through, to watch her boyfriend be murdered in front of her, to be locked up in a box, to be used at someone's whim in the way that he did, and then to find out that he killed so many other people, and now to find out he's playing with the media, he's saying that there's more. There's a side of me that wants to believe that every person has a chance at redemption. I think there's a question that should be asked, though, of how many chances that person has at redemption. And with some of the cases that I deal with, it's really hard for me to not look over at that capital punishment thing and say, maybe in this case. But I do really struggle with it. I'm not really completely on one side of the fence or the other with it. I know I wouldn't want to be the person to do it to someone else. I think even if it was someone close to me that was harmed by them, I don't think I could be that person. Once again, I think it kind of leads back to the conversation we were having about the correctional officers. There's a certain part of your soul that gets changed by you putting yourself in the situation to kind of be that type of role. And I certainly wouldn't want to do that to myself. I think you guys get the good sense that I care about people a lot. And that means people in a general sense, not just people that I happen to know or that I happen to come to know through my stories. I care about humanity in general, even people that don't agree with me. I totally get it. So it's a tough one. It's a really good question and something I could dive into maybe on another video. Chris and Wanda, if I was a halfway famous YouTuber, John, would you get into an internet beef with me just for fun? I don't know. I don't think my audience wants to see me do that kind of stuff. That's part of, did my voice just crack? That's part of what is interesting about YouTube, at least for my journey on it, is there was stuff that I wanted to do when I first got started, like wacky song spoofs and talking about movies and, ripping on J.J. Abrams and doing all that kind of stuff. I didn't really get an audience from that. And it's weird because it's when I started caring more about the content that I was talking about that all of a sudden the audience just popped. I mean, it was as soon as I cared about a topic enough, which was obviously, I doubt this video will get monetized, but if it would, now when I say her name, it'll be unmonetized. Obviously, it's the Elisa Lam case. Once I found that topic and I cared enough to really look into that and to try to bring some level conversation to a topic that I saw being kind of grossly misused on the internet for people's, I don't know if it was for clicks or views or attention or whatever. It was like all of a sudden the people were there. They wanted to see me talk about things more in that way. So part of your journey as a YouTuber is not just doing what you want to do. It's kind of finding the hole where it's not being done. And then if you're happy doing that, the audience kind of comes with you, and that's really where I had to find it. And it took a while, guys. I think my channel was started in 2013 or something like that, and Brain Scratch didn't happen until right around the start of 2015. So, and even before that, I had other channels where I was playing around with stuff. I did a lot of improv training when I was living around the Hollywood area. I have videos out there probably dating all the way back to 2007. God, that would be a cringe fest. Maybe I'll have to do that sometime. Just make a video where I'm looking at some of my old stuff. Let's see here. Jacqueline Cornwell, I absolutely love your channel. I could watch you every day, all day. You break the cases down and make the public aware of important info. Thank you so much. It's what I'm trying to do. And I'm trying to also do it in a way where, I don't know if you guys noticed, but like on the Brain Scratch I released today, there has to be a level of humanity to the stories. There's so many other channels that I see that when they turn these things into spooky stories, the humanity just completely leaves the situation. So I really like trying to understand the people that I'm talking about. In some cases, it actually helps in terms of understanding the investigation, because if it's like a missing person and you know what motivates them, then you might have some idea about how they would respond in a situation or why they went to a particular place or something like that. See, right now I'm doing what I was talking about earlier. It's because a cat showed up, but I don't think Shelby likes to be lifted too much. Shelby is now the oldest cat in the house. He is an orange tabby, and he just likes hanging out. He hears my voice going. He seems to come in. Nikki Mack, Danelle, is it Danelle? I think it's Danelle. I don't know. And I even watch her stuff, and I'm not sure how her name's pronounced. Danelle Halden talks about you on her channel. She told us to give you a heart. She loves you. I think she's doing great work. We've talked a bit about situations. She's a bit newer to covering some of these types of cases. She kind of sees me as, someone that's been doing it longer, and occasionally she reaches out to ask for advice on something, which I will always happily give. And I'm really happy to I kind of consider her in my camp of this version of YouTuber, where we're being respectful to cases, we're trying to help by raising awareness, and I think that she's probably got a little bit of a different audience than I do, so it's beneficial even if we, possibly cover the same cases. But I do keep an eye on her so that I don't try to cover the same cases she does too close. I don't know if that's really helpful to do on YouTube as a platform. So like I had someone that was asking me to cover the case that she just did this week, and I was like, I'll put it on my list, but I'm going to have to give it some time, because I think raising exposure on the same platform makes more sense if you kind of space it out a little bit. So at least that's my thinking on there. But she's doing really good work. I appreciate her approach. And I think it was, once again, kind of like what I was talking about with finding how I fit into YouTube and what you, the audience, want to see me do. I think she went through a similar thing too, because you could see her earlier videos are much more about makeup and fashion and that kind of stuff. And now she's getting into obviously topics that she cares about a lot, and she wants to speak about, and people want to see her talk about. Annie Abe, I believe, says hi. Hello, Annie. Let's see here. Maz Gould, watching from Malaga. Hope I'm saying that right. Spain. Hello, Spain, and hello, Maz. Someone else found me through Danelle. Yeah, I really appreciate that. And it's weird because I just noticed a bump in my subscribers that happened, I think, just at the end of last week or something. It's crazy when that happens because I never know for sure unless someone literally tells me. But I think it might have been her that mentioned me on her channel. Might have also been Kendall Ray, who I also consider kind of being in this same group of YouTubers, kind of YouTubers that care. Maybe we should form some kind of little company together, YouTubers that care. But I have to say, Kendall Ray will actually sometimes go into topics that I would shy away from. That's another thing that I'm kind of cautious about with YouTube, is what type of people I'm drawing to my channel, because I don't want it to be, I want there to be different thoughts and for people to have good conversations, but there's certain topics that I know just bring a lot of controversy which might be good for views, but in terms of strong conversations and people really trying to learn each other's perspective, I don't think that they're always that great. So I'm kind of interested to see Kendall's progression and just, how her channel is going to continue. I know her boyfriend, I think it's her boyfriend, not her husband. I think it's her boyfriend. Also has his own channel. I've kind of checked out his stuff a little bit, and he edges into a little bit of kind of brain scratchy stuff, but even a little bit further than that. So I'm interested to see where they go with that. I've been wondering if this whole journey that I've been on with doing brain scratch and all that has kind of turned me into too much of a skeptic. Every case that I look into, I try to remain open-minded, but I am finding more and more that my channel is skewing towards true crime and stuff like that. And don't get me wrong, I love looking into an alien sighting or, a ghost tape from a school in Ireland or something like that. But what happens when I really look into those things is I never find the research that makes me comfortable in believing what's happening in those supposed stories. And I do feel like it's starting to kind of tilt me to more of a skeptical mindset. But that's something I think everyone struggles with. If you think you're unbiased and you're able to just not think about being unbiased, you're probably not unbiased, is kind of at least the rule that I run by. Let's see here. People saying Happy New Year, and Happy New Year to everyone out there. I hope 2018 is treating you guys well so far. Maz Gould thinks that even A Gray State was interesting. I really struggled with that one. I do think that there was something very interesting about the story. Just as a film, it left me really lacking, and it kind of gave me this weird feeling. It kind of felt like a hit piece. I mean, it really just built up this guy and then showed you piece of evidence after piece of evidence about why what he was saying wasn't necessarily true. And it kind of deconstructed him by the end of it. And I don't feel great about that. I think once again, kind of like I hit in the review, if they would have been more unbiased with the information, if you would have seen that they gave a legitimate effort to understanding the kind of conspiracy theory angle there and trying to debunk it, then I think the conclusion would have been more satisfying to me, even if they went the same direction. But I don't feel like they really gave it a good, wholehearted effort. And I still question to this day who gave them access to all of that information. I mean, it was this guy's personal notes. I can't believe that it was opened up quite like that, especially considering how his life ended. I think it's a very dicey proposition to go into anyone's personal information in the first place. But when you have someone that ends their own life, then that's a whole different thing. I don't want to go too far into this topic, but there are important constraints. And I just have to say this because it's popping in my mind. I know Logan Paul is going through this YouTube drama right now with, him going to the suicide forest in Japan and showing a body on his channel. And I think the horrible thing that happened in all that, obviously, is that they allowed that footage to get on YouTube. And then, of course, it trended. I'm still wondering if his channel ever got a strike over it. I'm not saying to take him down, but I believe his channel should have at least received a strike. And I think due to his popularity, it probably didn't. But what I really would have loved to see out of that whole situation is for him to have filmed a vlog after that day, at the end of the day, kind of like he did at the start of that, where he's saying, you've never seen this before. I would have loved if it was just his perspective about how that moved him. And unfortunately, he obviously wasn't in the right headspace to do something like that. And now we have all this drama kind of spinning around it. I'm sure he's learning a very valuable lesson from it. I understand that he's a young man. But it's a tough thing, and you have to respect, there's certain lines of respect that I feel like he breached there. And I kind of wonder if A Gray State breached some of those lines as well. Brown Yes says, I like this site better than the other sites. Keeps up the excellent work. I will. Thank you so much. Chastity says, yeah, I agree. Gray State really bothered me. There was just something that just rang false. That's kind of the feeling I had too. And it's weird because I looked into it more and I don't really feel like there's much to the conspiracy theory angle. I really feel like their conclusion was probably the truth of the story, but the way they got us there felt kind of manipulative in some way that left me uncomfortable. Saber Crosby, hi from England. John, really enjoyed your road trip videos. Any more trips planned for 2018? I do have a couple of things. I know I'm going to go to VidCon again. I've already got my ticket for that, so I'll certainly be going out to Anaheim again. I'm thinking about going to CrimeCon, and I do believe that, I mean, I could fly there, but I could drive there. Road trip video was pretty fun. I really liked doing the stop at the Stanley Hotel. And it's something that kind of comes up frequently from comments I see from you guys. You like when I get out of the studio. I would love to be able to do that more, but there is a balance that I have to strike when I'm doing, 5 shows a week, and, doing all the research for those shows and churning that kind of content to really free myself up to be able to do a trip and to collect all that footage and then bring it back. It kind of breaks the cycle that I'm in currently. It's one of those things, though, if the channel grows to the right size and I'm able to, get the right type of help, I feel like I've been saying this for 2 years already, but if there's ever a point where I'm able to hire on someone to handle the editing and kind of the uploading aspect, that might free up enough of my time for me to consider kind of getting out a little more into the field and doing that type of investigations. I'd also love if I can get some collaboration going with maybe some private investigation companies, even if it's just interviewing PIs that are working on particular cases or something like that, just something that kind of kicks around in my head. Let's see. Making a Murderer, Rhiannon, I actually did a review on that, and I think I did a spoiler chat on it. So you can check in the video section of Lord and Art's channel and just, or do a search for Making a Murderer, Lord and Art's, and I'm sure you'll be able to find those conversations. I need to check in on that, on what's going on with it lately, because I know that there was some stuff going on with, I think Brendan was going to get released. I'm not sure if he did or not. Mr. Burns is asking, where is CrimeCon? I believe it's in Tennessee this year. I think they're moving it from where it was last year. And if I recall correctly, last year was the first one. I'm kind of on the fence about going, just because when I look at what they did last year, some of the stuff makes me kind of twinge a little bit. Like they have a fake murder mystery that's going on. Like, I don't know if it's going on at the convention or at hotels that are participating with the convention, but almost like a wild or like a goose chase type thing, but you're tracking down pieces of evidence for a murder mystery. And you guys know that the stuff I'm doing is true crime, and obviously true crime or CrimeCon is supposed to be heavily featured about true crime. But when I see fictionalized stuff like that, it kind of makes me wonder. I'm like, is this going to be something too hokey, or is this going to be something legit? But if you look at the guest list of people that went there in particular last year, I think probably the biggest name on that list would have been Nancy Grace. Definitely some people that have, have some big stock in this true crime area. Luciferin7 asking, John, is there anything you could think of that would help the Facebook Lord and Arts page be more useful to you? I know AC really wants to help grow it somehow. AC kind of fell off the map. I reached out to her a little bit and she didn't reply. So AC, if you are out there, I would love to hear from you. I'd love to see if there's something I can do to help you with that. Maybe we can set up some type of Facebook special event or something to help with that. It's tough. I don't have an official, I mean, that's as close to an official Lord and Arts presence as I have on Facebook. I personally don't use Facebook. I feel pretty strongly about that. I've just seen so many terrible things with Facebook. Even looking at the Delphi murders case, we now have the authorities there mentioning that people are still whipping around pictures of, people next to the mug shot saying, I think this is the guy, and they're asking people not to do that. I struggle. I really struggle with Facebook just kind of as an entity. And as a technology, the intent of it, I really have never been able to understand. But if there is something I could do to help AC with the Lord and Arts fan Facebook page, I absolutely would. So if you can get that message to her, let her know I'm here. Oh, and Rhiannon says, yeah, she does mean the more recent developments. I'll have to look into that and see if there's enough to do an update on that. I'm not familiar enough with it off the top of my head. And that's a bit of the downside of what I do here is I do focus on cases very intently, but I don't always focus on the general news as its own thing. Pretty much from when I get up in the morning, I'm going on research until that camera fires up. So I do have my associate producer, the wonderful Christy Strasiner, who helps keep me up to date on everything that I've covered. She also does research for certain topics on the shows. But that's why your guys' suggestions are so important. That's why I keep a list of everything you suggest. But it is tough, for brain scratch cases. I think we're over 250 currently on the list. For searchlight cases, we are over 170. Essentially, I could stop taking suggestions right now and I would have enough episodes for over 3 years of searchlight cases. And there's something about that I personally struggle with because I want to try to help these cases. I want to try to help as many as I can. The thought has even danced through my head about, doing more searchlight episodes per week. However, there's a bit of a trade-off because each episode I do has the potential to turn into something more, in particular when the families reach out to me. And then sometimes I try to help them beyond doing the actual episode. And emotionally, that is somewhat taxing. And I know that, please, what I'm going through is nothing compared to what those families are facing. But that's part of what's taxing about it is I want to help them so much. For example, like with this BJ Ward case and all the episodes I did on that, I did the interview with Tori during my vacation. It was just important to me to actually get that done and to keep getting information out there and to try to get closer to the truth on those cases and to help these people. These people are in pain. So yeah, Searchlight. It's something that I don't know how I could ever stop doing it. As long as you guys are there to watch and to help share those stories, I'm gonna keep doing them. That thing just it means too much to me. Are you going to do a review about the Maura Murray documentary that came out recently? Says Minot Christine. Hope I'm saying that right, or might not. It's Minot, isn't it? I don't know about that documentary right off the top of my head. I'll check it out thanks to your suggestion. But I do want to say that the two guys, Tim and Lance, known for the, I think it's Missing Maura Murray podcast. I know I talked about it on the episode about their podcast. They have reached out to me and they're doing a new podcast series. They want me to be on it, and we are lining that up. So I will be talking to them, and I think we are going to talk about the Maura Murray case. I think that's one of the things they want to cover. So that will be coming soon. I'll be sure to let you all know about that. Let's see. John, what do you think about coerced confessions? I think it's a problem. I've kind of talked about it in a few videos on the channel. There's a certain break point where I think that those types of confessions shouldn't be considered. For example, if you have an interview that has gone on for, more than 8 hours, let's say, I think that that confession should be highly suspect. And I think to try to take that confession without having the full transcript of all of the dialogue leading up to that confession should never happen, and it happens all the time. What the confessions should do, and this is just my opinion, the confessions should allow the authorities to investigate the matter and prove that that confession is true. Otherwise, I think that they should be junked. If you have someone saying, I know there's one case in particular where someone said that he had killed his sister. Okay, well, tell us where the body is. Okay, here's where the body is. Okay, and what item did you use? Tell us where that item is. Here's where the item is. Go find those items, find the body, and then bam, you've got your case. And yes, your confession is supported by evidence. Unfortunately, even in that case, they went looking. The body wasn't where he said it would be, and they never found the item that he used to supposedly kill his sister. It seems like it was just a completely false confession. So I really struggle with those. And I think I saw that there's something on Netflix. I think there's a new series specifically about that, which maybe I should check out and review for the channel as well. All right. I think that's about it, guys. I'm gonna call it. Once Renata leaves, then we're all taking off. It's so nice of you guys. Everyone's saying bye to Renata. It is also bye to John. I want to go before my voice wears out. But thank you guys so much. It really is a joy talking to you guys, and I'm happy that I decided to do this, just to kick this into a kind of informal Q&A at the end of this interview. I really appreciate Thomas and John talking about breaking the cycle, and thanks to all of you for all the great conversation that we've had about that. A lot of tough questions there. I think we all still have a lot to consider. And I will certainly consider doing more live Q&As in the future, definitely for when I hit 50K, which based on my math is probably going to happen within maybe the next 2 months or so, somewhere around there. If I can't get to one sooner than that, just know that around 50K, we will do this again. Take care, everyone. I'll see you back here on the Lord and Arts channel whenever I have a new video. It's weird because I'm doing this on Friday, but on Tuesday there'll be something new for you guys. Take care, and I'll see you there.